This is Barry Allen from Earth 123. And when he was a kid, unfortunately his mom had passed away at the hands of a supervillain, resulting with his dad being charged with the murder of his mom. So Barry had to grow up without his parents in his life. But everything had changed one day when Barry Allen got struck by lightning infused with the Speed Force. Because all of a sudden he was now the fastest man on the planet, and eventually he became the Flash. But this is around the same time where Barry would encounter his greatest enemy, Reverse Flash. And he told Barry straight up that he would send his mom to an early grave in every single universe, unless Barry can win a Heisman Trophy. So today I am putting Barry Allen into College Football 26. Let's see if Barry can find a way to save his mom as we follow him on his road to glory. Now, Barry Allen had never played football in his life, so he actually had to run back in time to just a few years earlier when he was a senior in high school, because he now had to join the Central City football team, and it was time for him to start finding a way to earn some scholarships on the field. Because now Barry Allen is heading into the first game of his high school career. Now early on here, Barry is having no problem running faster than these players, but he didn't want to make it too obvious that he was a speedster, so he had to let the defense get some tackles. But Barry knew eventually that he'd have to start making some big plays. So on this one, he zoomed upfield, and he was making his way to the end zone for his first touchdown of his high school career. Barry Allen was showing already that he had potential to be a star. Coaches around the nation were already noticing that Central City had one of the fastest players in the country. And that's why after his first game, he was already getting scholarships. Barry Allen was gaining interest from a bunch of schools around the country, and it wasn't hard to see why when he was able to just zoom through open lanes and score touchdowns for his team. The crazy thing about it though, man, is that Barry Allen was so fast that he was able to use his super speed sometimes without people even noticing. Because this DB definitely has an angle on Barry, but he just flashes right by to the end zone, scoring another touchdown that would help him gain some interest from teams. And he continued to play well going forward throughout his senior year as he was just blazing by his opponents, which is probably why he began to be labeled as a 4-star recruit and was getting offers from some of the best schools in the nation. But this was only really the beginning for Barry as he just continued to dominate throughout his senior year, and there was really nobody who could stop him as he just continued to score touchdowns all throughout the season. He became such a great player that he was ultimately pushed up to a 5-star recruit. Barry Allen was now recognized as one of the top recruits in the nation, and he was being offered by pretty much every school in college football. And soon, he was ready to decide exactly where he wanted to go. But it turns out the choice would not be up to Barry, because there was one particular college that just really connected to him, probably because they shared a lot of similarities. Because for Barry Allen's college decision, he had ultimately decided to sign with the Kent State Golden Flashes. Now that Barry Allen is finally out of college, he has to pick a new number, and ultimately he decided to run with 3. But with Barry actually being one of the top recruits in the nation, there were people wondering why he chose to come to a low-level school. And although he didn't realize how bad of a team Kent State really was, he decided to just say that it was for the opportunity. Regardless of what Barry said though, Kent State was glad that they had a player like Barry, because he was pretty much uncatchable at practice, and they realized just how fast he truly is. Because even though he's just a true freshman, he is definitely a speedster. And Kent State will need him to be with the schedule that they have coming up, especially with them not even being a 1-star program. But it seems like the Golden Flashes will be heading into a tune-up game in the first week of the season, as Barry Allen is set to make his college football debut against FCS West. Now, believe it or not, Barry Allen was actually having a little bit of a tough time playing against this defense. There was no way for him to show off his speed without it being too obvious, so he had to just keep getting tackled, bringing us to 3rd down and 6 where Barry would make a catch and have a chance to say hey before zooming his way to the outside, and soon Barry Allen was heading upfield for his first touchdown of his college football career. Barry is already showing just how great he can be, because against FCS West, although he wasn't getting a lot of yards on the ground, he was definitely getting a ton of yards through the air. He was coming up with another huge reception that brought him downfield and across the goal line for a touchdown. Barry Allen was dominating as a receiver. Unfortunately, he wasn't doing as well at running back because he was still adjusting to the speed of the game at a college level. He just wasn't as tapped into the Speed Force since he had gone back in time. But that was all good when Barry was out here saying, "Excuse me, skibidi-doo-bop, hey," and breaking free for another big gain. Barry Allen is heading down the sideline for another touchdown, making a play that extends his team's lead to 4 possessions and ultimately gives them their first victory of the season, as Kent State would dominate this one 30-0 in a game where Barry didn't even rush for 50 yards. He did go for over 250 receiving yards though, so he had an excellent day. He earned himself Conference Player of the Week in the first game of his career. And by no surprise, the coaches were happy with the way that Barry had conducted himself since coming to college. But there were also a lot of people in the world that were happy with the Flash being a superhero. He was helping other heroes like Supergirl take out some big-time enemies. But now it was about to be time for the Flash to help his team take out a big-time opponent, as they were heading into one of the biggest games of the season. They're about to face off against one of the top teams in the SEC on the road, the LSU Tigers. Now this is another game where early on, Barry is actually making a nice impact as a receiver. Unfortunately, he was still struggling as a running back, because by his third carry, he had -1 yard. Eventually though, Barry knew that he would have to change that. So on the very next carry, he would take this handoff and he was running right by this entire defense. Barry Allen was going the distance against the top 25 team in the nation. He comes up with a touchdown here to put the first points on the board in this game and hopefully give his team some momentum in a hostile environment. And I'll tell you what, it seems like they got a little bit of momentum on their side as they get the ball back with the lead. And they might have a chance to add to it here as Barry gets to the outside and Barry Allen was gone. There was nobody going to catch him on his way to the end zone for a touchdown, and he just had to make sure that he wasn't dreaming or something because even he couldn't believe that he was doing this. Reality would eventually set in though, as this game was tied at 17 and Barry was getting stopped on third down. By the fourth quarter though, now down by 7, he would realize that if he ever wanted to win a Heisman, he would have to make some big plays against teams like this. And on this play, it seems like LSU agreed as nobody was guarding Barry, and he was able to just come up with a catch over the top. And yeah, buddy, good luck catching up with that, man. He's on his way to the end zone for his third score of the day, which turned out to be points that would send this game into overtime. Where after getting the ball second and with LSU only scoring a field goal, Barry knew that all he had to do was just find a way to get in the end zone, bringing us to 3rd and goal where they would pitch it out to Barry, and he was able to cut it upfield for a score. Kent State was putting up a touchdown in overtime that would help them take down a top 25 team in the country. This team was already showing that with Barry Allen, they have a chance to beat pretty much anybody in the nation, especially when he has games where he's rushing for over 170 yards and 4 touchdowns, not to mention the extra 150 plus yards as a receiver. This kid was already making an impact for this team as he was being recognized as a National Offensive Player of the Week. And he felt like if he kept this up, then he would definitely have a great chance at potentially winning the Heisman. But it wasn't going to get any easier heading into the next game, as Barry was leading 2-0 Kent State on the road against another top-ranked team in the country. This time against the defending national champions, the 6th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. Now against Ohio State early on, Barry was actually coming up with some extremely clutch plays, helping his team convert a 3rd down and 16, and just a few plays later he was out here saying, "Hey, skip-a-doo-bop, get off," and helped his team recover from a sack on 2nd down and 18, leading his team towards the goal line where on a 3rd down they left Barry wide open, and he comes up with an easy touchdown to try and get his team locked in for this game. Unfortunately, Kent State was indeed not locked in, because they were letting Barry get clobbered in the backfield on almost every single play, and the quarterback wasn't helping much when he was throwing his passes all the way to Star City. So Kent State would end up getting destroyed in this game, just absolutely decimated 38-7. And Barry knows that even with his team being atrocious, he could not be performing like this. So he decided it was time for him to use something that he'd been working on for a while called a tachyon device, with the hopes that it would get him connected more with the Speed Force and help him play even better on the field. And soon it would be time for him to officially test it out as he was heading into his next game. He was going to be back at home heading into a matchup against another 2-1 team, the Florida Atlantic Owls. Now Florida Atlantic turns the ball over early on and sets Kent State up with great field position, leading us to a 3rd and goal where this Kent State quarterback dropped back and threw a touchdown, the first score of the game to get this one going. And soon Barry Allen would get going too, as on the next drive he was coming up with some big plays to move the chains for his team. He had his team at the midfield mark when his quarterback threw a pick. Pretty bad turnover that allows Florida Atlantic to take the lead. And after Barry Allen came out here on 3rd down and got stopped, Kent State had to settle for a field goal before Florida Atlantic got one of their own. And all of a sudden things were looking down for Kent State as Barry was back to being dropped behind the line of scrimmage, bringing us to a 3rd down and 15 where Barry knew that they just could not go out like this. So after coming up with this catch, he would zoom towards the sideline, and he sees one guy coming his way before snatching his ankles and coming up with a touchdown to take the lead back for Kent State. He's got the Golden Flashes ahead of this game, and they would maintain this lead into the 4th quarter. Where on another 3rd down, Barry would take this handoff up the middle, and with the help of a couple good blocks, Barry was able to zoom past this entire defense for another score that puts Kent State up by 2 possessions. Barry Allen was running so fast in this play that he actually phased through the ref, and nobody even noticed. He came up with an incredible play that helped his team move to 3-1 on the season. taking down the Owls 24-13 in a game where Barry rushed for over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, absolutely dominating when it was time to, and it turns out he would not only earn himself another Conference Player of the Week, but he was actually also getting an NIL deal from Star Labs. But not even being halfway through the season, man, Barry knew he had to stay locked in. He had to be good enough to win this Heisman and save his mom in every universe, but he knew the only way to do that was by coming up with some big time performances like he was hopefully going to do in his next game against Western Michigan. Now unfortunately this was another game where Barry's offensive line was struggling and his quarterback was struggling even worse throughout this first half. It wouldn't be until around 8 seconds left in the second quarter where Barry came up with the catch that puts them in field goal range, allowing them to come up with at least some points heading into the third quarter down by 10, which is where Western Michigan would actually turn the ball over early and allow Barry Allen to come up with a big play for a touchdown. He's got his team within a 1-score game now before getting the ball back in the fourth quarter, bringing us to a play backed up on their own 4-yard line where Barry knows he has to make something happen. So after taking this pitch here, he would break this dude's ankles, and Barry Allen was loose. Barry was back to being tapped in with the speed force, and he knew he could just glide past this last defensive player for a touchdown. He had his team with the lead in the fourth quarter before Western Michigan would take it right back. And now with around 2 minutes left, he had to help his team go on a game-winning drive, which he was definitely doing a great job doing so as he brought them to the 50. Eventually they would get deep into field goal range as they got to the 17-yard line. We're on a 3rd down and 7, Barry runs out to the flat, and he comes up with a catch before turning upfield for a touchdown. Barry Allen scores some points that puts his team up in the final moments of this game, doing enough to get them another W on the season. Kent State closed this game out 24-19 thanks to another impactful performance from Barry Allen. He put up over 250 total yards and 3 touchdowns. He was absolutely locked in. Probably because he doesn't have to deal with Iris West, who is easily the worst part of this show, but that's a conversation for a different day. But at this point in the season, man, Barry Allen was on fire. He came out here in a game against UMass where he scored a touchdown early, but he was looking at his second one on this play as he makes his way towards the outside and he is gliding his way up the field for another touchdown already. This UMass defense had absolutely no burners in their secondary, and that would become evidently clear here as Barry was outrunning this entire defense and he was on his way to the end zone for his 3rd score of the day. By the third quarter, Barry is having one of the best games of his career. But it was only getting better after he jumped over this guy into the end zone, coming up with his 4th score of the day. And it turns out that he's still not even done yet, because at the end of the third quarter, Barry had over 200 yards rushing, but he was looking to add some more to it after getting this ball to the outside, spitting out a defender, and oh yeah, he's gone. Barry Allen was to the end zone for his 5th touchdown of the evening, putting on an incredible performance that helped his team dominate their opponent. They beat the brakes off of UMass 38-17 thanks to a historical day from Barry Allen. He had dominated this one, going for over 400 total yards and 5 touchdowns, ultimately breaking the single game rushing touchdown record for Kent State. And even when he wasn't the Flash, Barry was being recognized as the fastest man in the country. Barry knows if he keeps performing like this, he'll definitely be able to save his mom. But he wasn't going to get complacent, so he kept working hard to improve, because he knew that now being halfway through the season, he still had quite a few games left to play. So he had no choice but to lock in and help his team continue dominating throughout the season. Now in a game against Toledo on Barry Allen's very first play, they get the ball to him on the outside and he has a ton of space before jumping over a defender and making his way across the goal line for a touchdown. And it turns out that this would set the tone for the team, as by the second half they were up by 14 points, and it didn't seem like they had any plans of stopping as Barry Allen had finessed his way into the second level, and there wasn't even anybody on the screen that could catch Barry Allen. He was getting across the goal line for his 2nd score of the day, bringing us to the end of the third quarter where Barry literally only has 5 rushing attempts. But his 6th one looked like it could be a good one too, as he found an open lane, and there was absolutely no way that Toledo would catch up. Barry was on his way to the end zone for a touchdown, and it was because of him that a lot more fans were showing up to the games. And also because of Barry Allen, this game would end up being a W for Kent State. They take down Toledo 28-0 in another 200-yard performance from Barry Allen. He's been feeling great about the way he's been playing, considering he's winning another Offensive Player of the Week. but he still was out here working because he knew he can be even better. So he came into this next game against Bowling Green with 60+ yards in the first quarter already, and he was coming up with a reception for a touchdown. He was definitely getting used to playing against some of these low-level college teams that didn't have many athletes on the squad. Well, besides whoever this number 5 dude is who tracked down Barry. But by the end of this game, it didn't seem like Bowling Green had enough to contain the Flash, because throughout this one it seemed like he had no problem slicing up this defense, and with under 2 minutes left he was over 200 yards and got his second touchdown of the day. He was cooking up another opponent as Kent State goes on to win another game. No surprise he was winning another Offensive Player of the Week, and his coaches were extremely happy with Barry. He was one of the best things that's ever happened to this program, and he was also one of the best things that's ever happened to the world, because he was still out here saving people every day when he was away from football. Somehow though, he still had time to improve upon his skills on the field, and every single week it seemed to show. Especially in his next game against Miami of Ohio, when Barry took this handoff up the middle, and his super speed is already too much for Miami, because he is just leaving these defenders in the dust as he crosses over the goal line for a touchdown. And it turns out he was already doing enough to help his team come up with another win, taking down Miami of Ohio 10-3 and another 150+ yard performance from Barry Allen. Now at this point in the season, Barry is extremely confident with his team. They are definitely one of the worst squads in the nation, but with him, they can pretty much beat anybody. And they're going to continue to try to prove it heading into their next game at home against Eastern Michigan. Now this game was absolutely not getting off to a great start. I mean, I can't even say it's getting off to a good one after the quarterback throws a pick, and it was taken all the way to the crib for a touchdown to put EMU up by 7. So already the Eagles were up in this game, and the momentum seemed to be on their side. At least until Barry took this ball to the outside and turned it upfield, where he had nobody in front of him that could stop him from scoring a touchdown. Barry Allen was finally getting things going here at the end of the first quarter, bringing us now to the end of the second, where this offense finally gets the ball back. And after a couple moves from Barry in the backfield, he is zooming upfield, and Barry Allen is just too fast. Some people even say that he's flash fast. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that seems kind of fitting. Either way, he scores another touchdown that puts Kent State up by a possession. But they knew if they wanted to come away with the win against a 6-3 conference opponent, they could not stop here. So there were some other players on this offense that were coming up with some big plays, like this receiver who scored a touchdown that put them up by 2 possessions. Kent State had complete control of this game at this point, and they were looking to close it out, bringing us to a 3rd down and 12, where Barry actually felt like he thought something was about to happen. He could almost sense something going on across the country, so he had to run out the stadium real quick because there was actually a rocket that he had to stop and throw the other way. But he immediately got back to the game in time for the handoff, where he just burst up the middle and nobody was catching Barry for his second score of the day. The Golden Flashes go up by 3 possessions and officially secure their 10th win of the season. This team was absolutely on fire thanks to Barry Allen, who went for over 200 yards in another game. He was having a profound impact on the program, already breaking the single season record for rushing yards and rushing touchdowns with a couple games left to go. Because at this point, with Kent State now being the 24th ranked team in the nation, they were definitely going to get a chance to play in the conference championship. All they had to do now was just take care of business in the final game of the regular season, where they will be on the road set to face off against Central Michigan. Now, although Barry Allen would prove that he is an incredible football player, he was definitely not perfect, as he fumbles the ball on his second touch of the day, giving it away to Central Michigan. Unfortunately for Central Michigan though, they were not able to capitalize, which they would definitely regret after Barry Allen takes this pitch to the outside, and even with the defenders actually closing in, Barry Allen was just too fast as he gets across the goal line for a touchdown to put Kent State up before Central Michigan ties it back at 7. So at this point it seems like this game could definitely be a shootout, but Barry Allen does not seem like he's trying to allow that to happen, as somehow he escapes all these tackles and he is just zooming down the sideline for another touchdown. The Golden Flashes go up a score, but despite a great play from Barry Allen, Central Michigan is keeping this one close. And it looks like they have a chance to take the lead after Barry Allen gets stopped in the backfield on 3rd down, forcing Kent State to settle for a field goal, but Central Michigan wasn't able to score any points in the 4th, bringing us to a 3rd and goal where Barry easily dives across the goal line for a touchdown, putting up a score that extends the Golden Flashes lead to 2 possessions with under 2 minutes left in the game, and ultimately does enough to officially close out the regular season. 24 ranked Kent State puts up 24 points in their final game of the year. And yet again, it was another miraculous performance from Barry Allen, and he was being recognized for it with another Offensive Player of the Week. At this point though, Barry didn't really know how to feel after he found out that Kent State was no longer ranked. somehow they dropped out of the top 25 and they didn't have a big chance of making the college football playoffs. So that was definitely a little weird at first, but the next week Kent State would find themselves back in the rankings as they were now heading into the conference championship, where for a chance to potentially punch their ticket to the college football playoffs, they will have to take down an opponent that they've already beat earlier this year, as they're set to face off against Miami of Ohio. Barry Allen started this game off by trying to help his team convert a 3rd down and 7, which he eventually did. Unfortunately, it seems like the offense was struggling pretty greatly after that. They ended up getting stopped on a 3rd down and 17, resulting in them getting no points. And by the end of the first half, Barry still had less than 50 yards total and was pretty much a non-factor for this team. It wouldn't be until the 3rd quarter where Barry Allen got stopped in the backfield on 3rd down, where he finally realized that it was time for him to lock in and really make a play. So that's why on this one he would take this handoff and he was zooming up the middle for some big yards. Barry Allen just had one more man to beat and he was finding a way to drag him across the goal line for a touchdown. Barry Allen was in the end zone to finally put some points on the board. And he had Kent State up by 7 heading into the 4th quarter, where on 3rd and 9 the Golden Flashes were trying to stay on the field and the Flash was helping them do it. He came up with a big reception that pushed them all the way into the red zone, bringing us to the very next play where Barry had the entire outside free and he was easily able to cross over the goal line for another score. Kent State was going up 2 possessions with less than 2 minutes left, and this score was already enough to earn them a conference title. Kent State wins the Mid-American Conference for the 2nd time in their program history, probably already solidifying one of, if not the best year that they've ever had. And each and every one of them know that it could not have been done without Barry Allen. Because after helping them win a conference title, he was officially being awarded for his incredible season, earning himself the Walter Camp Award for going for over 2,000 yards on the year. Barry had dominated every opponent that he's come across, and there weren't many, if any, that held him under 100 yards total. He had one of the greatest rushing seasons of all time, which is probably why he would go on to earn himself the Heisman Trophy. Barry Allen had done it. He had earned the award that would help save his mom, or at least that's what he thought, cause Reverse Flash would find him, and he told Barry that that shit was too easy. And if Barry really wanted him to stop taking out his mom, he was gonna have to win a national championship. The only problem was that Kent State would not make the college football playoffs. They are sitting at 12-1 and are being snubbed by teams like Tulane, Indiana, and fake-ass Patrick Mahomes in Nebraska. I'm so mad for Barry, because now he has to stay in this timeline and try and help his team win a championship next season. He wishes he can go back in time and win that game against Ohio State, but then he would have to play all those other games as well. So at this point, all Barry can do is just close out his freshman season in a bowl game against Georgia Tech. Now sitting at 12-1, Barry honestly felt disgusted that he had to play in a bowl game against Georgia Tech. He felt like Kent State should be playing in the first round of the playoffs right now, and he was looking to prove that. Because by the end of the first quarter, Barry was coming up with his 2nd touchdown already. And at this point, he already knew that Georgia Tech was not going to be able to stop him. And that would be proven further by the end of the first half as Barry dives across the goal line for his 3rd score of the day. And it actually turns out that this score would already be enough to put an end to Barry Allen's freshman season, as Kent State would win the Game Above Sports Bowl 21-14. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, bro, y'all be having a bowl game about anything, man. Let's get a GManski bowl game. But we can talk about that later though, because for Barry Allen's season, he played incredible. Over 2,200 yards rushing and 27 touchdowns, along with almost 1,000 yards receiving and 9 scores. He had absolutely dominated this year in a weaker conference, which Barry honestly felt like might be the problem. He knew that if he played for a better team, he might have had a chance to make it to the college football playoffs and save his mom. And although it was kind of unfair for Reverse Flash to switch things up at the last second, Barry just had no choice and he had to find a way to win a championship. So going into his sophomore season, he was going to enter the transfer portal, and he had no idea where he wanted to go to, but he had a huge decision to make. But I'll leave that decision up to you guys. If you want to see a part 2 of the Flash in college football, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Shout out to Tristan Franklin, who had one of the best comments of the week. I'm just gonna call him Noah. Hey man, shout out my nigga Noah. If you still haven't seen the video where I played as Noah Kaniga in College Football 26, be sure to check that one out. But like I said, I appreciate you all. I hope you all have a great weekend, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.